At 7:52 a.m., a billionaire CEO was minutes away from signing the bankruptcy papers that would destroy everything his family had built. In another part of the building, an obese single mother, once a battlefield doctor, now a night shift cleaner, was fighting her own war just to keep her sick child alive. Their worlds were never meant to collide. He lived in boardrooms of glass and power. She lived in the shadows where no one remembered her name. But one morning, while wiping down an empty office, she spotted a mistake. One number that didn't belong. A number that could ruin a company. Or save it. What she chose to do next changed both of their lives forever. And it all began with a single act of courage. By the time the harbor cranes blinked to life over Harbor City, Lena Cruz was already 3 hours into her shift. The loading docks were a distant glow through the glass of the Atlas Tower, but she could smell the sea every time the service door opened, carrying in the tang of salt and diesel and rain. She pushed her cleaning cart across the silent marble lobby, the wheels squeaking with every turn. Her reflection followed her in the floor, broad shoulders under an oversized navy uniform, soft stomach pressing against the buttons, dark hair twisted into a tired bun. People pretended not to see her during the day. At 4 a.m, there was no one to pretend. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with a gloved hand. A photo from home filled the cracked screen. Nico, 8 years old, eyes too big for his pale face, giving her a thumbs up from the couch. His nebulizer mask hung crooked around his neck. Beside the image, her neighbor had typed, "Temp a little down." He finally fell asleep. "Go be a hero, Doc. Doc." The nickname still made her flinch. Once, not that long ago, she had been Captain Lena Cruz, Army doctor, directing field triage under helicopter blades and sandstorms. She knew how to keep a dozen wounded men alive with 3 bags of fluids and sheer stubbornness. Now she scrubbed offices for Orion Meridian Logistics and picked up extra weekend hours doing simple data entry for the accounting department to pay for Nico's inhalers and cardiology appointments. She swiped into the 18th floor, where most people only saw conference rooms and glass. She saw fingerprints on door handles, coffee rings on tables, and the tightness in the air that came when a company was pretending everything was fine. Lately, the meetings ran later. Doors stayed closed. Voices dropped when she stepped off the elevator with her cart. Tonight, she started in the records room. Boxes of old contracts and binders sat in neat rows, labels bleeding into one another. Q1, Q2, audit, legal. On the center table, next to a half-finished coffee someone had abandoned, lay a red folder she didn't recognize. Across the front, in thick black marker, someone had written, "Emergency petition, voluntary bankruptcy, 8:00 a.m. Lena froze. Bankruptcy for Orion Meridian, for the company that owned the ships Nico loved to watch from their tiny balcony. She told herself she would just move the folder so it wouldn't get sprayed with disinfectant. But when she lifted it, the flap slid open and the first page stared up at her. Total consolidated liabilities, $91,400,000. Her stomach dipped. The rows underneath were dense with figures and creditor names. A few of them looked painfully familiar. She had typed them into a spreadsheet last Saturday, sitting alone at a borrowed desk while the rest of the building slept, double-checking faded invoices until the numbers blurred. One line grabbed her. North Shore Fuel Cooperative, outstanding, $19,700,000. She remembered that one. The handwriting on the paper invoice had been a mess, a 9 that might have been a 1, a smudge of ink where a decimal should be. She had been exhausted, thinking about Nico's tight breathing and the way the hospital had mentioned insurance review in the same breath as specialist. She had stared at that number for a full minute, then entered 19.7 into the sheet, telling herself she could cross-check it later. Only she never did. Her pulse picked up. On the petition, that same line sat there like a brick in a drowning man's pockets. If it was supposed to be 9.7, that was $10 million of imaginary debt. And it wasn't the only figure that felt wrong. Lena grabbed a legal pad and started copying the main totals she remembered from the data entry spreadsheet. Muscle memory from the army kicked in. The same part of her that could recite drug dosages and casualty counts under fire now lined up columns and added in her head. 72 million. That was the number she hit over and over, not 91. She redid the math 3 times, whispering under her breath. The answer didn't budge. Somewhere between her bleary midnight typing and this polished petition for the bankruptcy court, almost $20 million of extra debt had appeared. Some of it might be her fault. The rest, someone else's. At the top of the page, the petitioner's name stared back at her. Adrian Cole, founder and chief executive officer. The business magazines in the break room called him the harbor gentleman, the billionaire who wore rolled shirt sleeves instead of ties, who remembered interns' names and quietly funded scholarships for dock workers' kids. Lena had only seen him once, from the back of a crowded elevator. He had looked like any other tall man in a gray suit, except people's posture changed when he walked in, like they'd straightened around a gravity she couldn't feel. According to the petition, at 8 o'clock sharp he was scheduled to walk into a courtroom and swear, under oath, that his company was crushed by debts that weren't real. Because of a number she might have misread. Because of numbers someone else might have pushed higher. Lena's chest tightened. If she stayed quiet, no one would ever connect this to the obese single mom who mopped the floors. She could clock out at 6, rush home to Nico, and pretend the red folder had never existed. But she had held soldiers' hands while they whispered regrets into her scrubs. She had promised herself, back when the uniform still fit, that she would never look away from something wrong just because it was safer. Her hand shook as she set the petition back on the table. Instead of reaching for the mop, she reached for her phone and opened the company directory, scrolling down until she found a name she had never once imagined calling before dawn. Cole, Adrian, Executive Office, Direct Line. The call rang twice before someone answered. Cole. Just a single syllable, steady, low, clipped in that way people speak when their world has shrunk to one crisis. Lena's throat closed. For a moment she forgot every word she'd rehearsed. Mr. Cole, sir, She sounded like a child. She forced her voice to steady. My name is Lena Cruz. I work nights on the 18th floor. Cleaning. Silence. Not dismissive. Surprised. I found your bankruptcy petition, she blurted. The numbers. Some of them aren't correct. They don't match the originals. The quiet on the other end sharpened, like air before a storm. Where are you right now? Adrian Cole asked. The records room. I'm coming up. The line went dead. Lena's pulse hammered so loudly she thought security would hear it. What was she doing? A janitor calling the CEO at dawn, claiming his bankruptcy petition had wrong numbers? She gathered the folder and her notes, pacing between shelves of binders older than she was. The elevator chimed. Adrian Cole stepped out alone. No assistant, no entourage. Just a tall man in a rain-darkened gray suit, his tie missing, his hair slightly mussed, like he'd been running numbers with his hands instead of sleeping. For the first time, She saw the exhaustion etched around his eyes, lines carved by weeks, maybe months of carrying a sinking empire on his back. When he saw her, something flickered. Recognition? No. Something quieter. Human. "You're Elena," he said, breath still uneven from the elevator ride. "Show me." She placed the petition and her scratch paper calculations on the center table. Her palms were sweating through her gloves. Adrian scanned the first page, then the second. His jaw tightened. "You're certain these don't match what you entered?" "I'm certain," she said softly. She swallowed hard. One of the numbers might have been my mistake. I had been up for almost 20 hours, and my son, he's sick. But it still doesn't account for all of it. Someone added amounts that were never in the originals. She expected anger, judgment, a lecture about boundaries. Instead, he exhaled, long and broken. 72. He tapped the table. "That's the number I saw in the preliminary reports. But this?" He lifted the petition. 91 million. It didn't sit right with me. He rubbed his face with both hands. "God, I thought maybe grief was making me paranoid." "Grief?" she echoed. Adrian looked up, eyes shadowed. "My father founded this company. He died 8 months ago. The debt piled up faster after that. People got careless. Or greedy." He looked toward the window, where dawn was smearing orange across the harbor. "And it seems someone was counting on me being too exhausted to notice." He lowered the papers. "You said you entered these numbers yourself." "I did." Lena braced herself. "If you need to fire me, I fire you." His voice cracked with disbelief. "Elena, you're the only person in this building who's even questioned these numbers." His gaze steadied on her. "You didn't cause this. You caught it." Her breath trembled. No one had spoken to her like that since the army. Adrian straightened, resolve settling across his shoulders. "There's only one person who has access to both the original invoices and the petition drafts." "Who?" He hesitated, throat working. "My CFO, Victor Hale. My father trusted him for 20 years. His voice sharpened. "I need proof. Yours is a start. But this?" He lifted her handwritten notes. "This won't hold in court." Lena's knees weakened. "I shouldn't have gotten involved." "You should have," Adrian said gently. "And you did." He stepped closer, not intimidating, but steadying, like a medic bracing someone before a field stitch. "At 8 a.m., I'm expected to sign this petition in a courtroom full of reporters. If these numbers are fraudulent, I'm signing away a company my father built and handing it to whoever inflated them." He set the red folder between them. "I'm not signing anything until we uncover the truth." His voice dropped. "And Elena, I want you there when Victor arrives. Not as a janitor, as the person who saw what everyone else missed." The clock on the wall ticked toward 7:03 a.m. 57 minutes until bankruptcy. 57 minutes until confrontation. And for the first time in years, Elena felt like the captain she once had been, standing on the edge of another battlefield. By the time they reached the executive floor, the building had begun to wake. Elevators hummed, early employees swiped in, and the distant thrum of printers filled the air. But the CEO's wing, the polished stretch of glass and walnut where fortunes were steered, remained sealed and silent. Adrian walked ahead with long strides, the red bankruptcy folder tucked under his arm like a bomb he refused to let detonate. Elena followed, clutching her notes to her chest, feeling painfully aware of her size, her uniform, her trembling hands. She didn't belong here. But the truth did. Inside the CEO's office, the lights flickered on, casting a soft glow across the harbor skyline. Adrian dropped the folder on his desk and turned to her. "When Victor arrives," he said, keeping his voice controlled, "I need you to stay calm. Just tell him what you saw." Lena nodded, though her stomach twisted. "And if he denies it?" Adrian's expression hardened. "He will." A chime sounded from the intercom. "Mr. Cole? Mr. Hale is arriving now?" Lena's pulse spiked. "Send him in," Adrian said. The door opened with the smooth hiss of expensive hinges. Victor Hale strode in like a man who belonged in corner offices. Tall, silver hair perfectly combed, suit tailored so sharply it could cut glass. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Adrian, I heard you were preparing for court. Is everything ready?" Adrian didn't return the smile. "We need to talk." Victor's gaze shifted to Elena, the overweight cleaning woman standing beside the CEO's desk, holding a notepad in gloved hands. Confusion flickered across his face, then dismissal. "I didn't realize this was a meeting for staff," he said lightly. "Should we schedule housekeeping for later?" Elena flinched, but Adrian's voice sliced through. "She's not housekeeping right now. She's the reason we're having this conversation." Victor blinked. "I beg your pardon?" Adrian lifted the bankruptcy petition and slid it across the desk. "Explain this." Victor skimmed the first page, expression unchanged. "Everything is accurate. These numbers have been reviewed half a dozen times." "No," Adrian said quietly. "They haven't." He stepped aside, revealing Elena like a soldier being called to testify. Elena reviewed the original invoices. She flagged inconsistencies, $20 million worth. Victor laughed, soft, controlled, patronizing. "Adrian, you're trusting a janitor's memory over documented accounting?" Lena swallowed hard, her palms cold. But she held her ground. "I did data entry for accounts processing on weekends. I handled every one of those invoices. Some of these numbers were altered." Victor raised a brow. "Altered? Are you accusing our department of fraud?" "I'm accusing someone of changing what I entered," she said. $10 million here, $5 million there, enough to push you into bankruptcy." Adrian opened his computer and projected a screen onto the wall. "These are the photos Elena took from the archive room." Victor stiffened. "She accessed restricted files?" "She accessed a folder someone left lying open," Adrian corrected. "A folder that shouldn't have been touched by anyone but you." The photos flashed on the screen, side-by-side comparisons of original numbers and the petition totals. Victor's jaw tightened. "Clerical errors, nothing more." $17 million isn't a clerical error, Adrian replied. For the first time, Victor's polished calm cracked. His fingers twitched. His throat pulsed. "You don't have proof," he said sharply. "Nothing connects me to—" "Actually," Adrian interrupted, pulling out a sealed envelope. One person finally came forward. Victor froze. "Jeanette Merrill," Adrian said. "Your former senior assistant. She gave me her backups. All of them." Color drained from Victor's face. Adrian's voice dropped to a cold whisper. "She kept every email, every document, every unauthorized revision." Victor's composure shattered. "You don't know what you're doing. If this becomes public, the board will hear the truth," Adrian said. Victor turned to Elena, eyes burning with fury. "You ruined everything. Do you think he'll remember you next week? You think you matter?" Elena's hands shook, but she met his gaze. "I matter enough to tell the truth." The office door burst open as corporate security stepped inside. Mr. Hale, one officer said, we need you to come with us. Victor's breath hitched. Then he grabbed his briefcase and stormed out, shouting over his shoulder, "This isn't over!" Silence flooded the room. Then Adrian looked at Elena, really looked at her. "You saved this company," he said softly. But Lena could only think, if this is what telling the truth feels like, how many lies had been standing untouched before today? When Victor Hale's footsteps faded down the hall, the adrenaline drained from Elena's body all at once. Her knees buckled, and she gripped the edge of Adrian's desk to steady herself. "I didn't think it would go like that," she whispered. Adrian placed the red petition folder aside and exhaled shakily. "I didn't either." For a moment, they simply stood there. Two exhausted people who had just pulled a company back from the edge of a cliff. Dawn spilled across the harbor through the floor-to-ceiling glass, painting the room gold. Adrian turned to her fully, the gratitude in his expression unguarded. "You were brave, Elena. I know you don't think so. But you stood in front of a man who's been deceiving me for months. And you didn't back down." Her throat tightened. "I just couldn't let someone repeat a mistake I made." "You didn't make anything," he said firmly. "Victor created this mess, not you." She opened her mouth to argue, but a sudden sharp knock interrupted them. The door swung open before Adrian could answer. Claire Donovan, the company's chief legal officer, strode in with a folder of her own. Her eyes swept the room, landing briefly on Elena before zeroing in on Adrian. "Security confirmed it," Claire said. "Victor attempted to authorize a secondary petition this morning with a different set of creditor numbers, completely unauthorized. Adrian, he was going to force your signature one way or another." Adrian rubbed his forehead. "God," Claire continued. "We've already secured his access, and the board is being briefed." She paused, glancing again at Elena. "And I've also been informed that Ms. Cruz here provided the first evidence?" Elena shifted awkwardly. I only saw something that didn't make sense." Claire's brows rose. "You noticed what 6 auditors missed. That's not nothing." Adrian stepped beside Elena. "It's more than nothing. It's competence. It's integrity. And it might have saved all of us." Elena fought the urge to look at her shoes. Compliments felt like clothes that didn't fit her anymore. Too fine, too strange, too foreign. Claire closed her folder. "Adrian, we need you downstairs in 15 minutes. The press has heard rumblings." "I'll be there," he said. Claire nodded and left. The moment she was gone, Adrian turned back to Elena with a softness she hadn't expected. "I don't want you to go home and think you were a bystander in all of this," he said quietly. "You weren't. You were the turning point. I'm just a cleaning—" "Stop," he said gently but with authority. "You're not just anything." Her breath hitched. Adrian walked to his desk, pulled out a notepad, and scribbled something. When he handed it to her, her heart stumbled. "Internal audit, temporary assistant analyst. Effective immediately, I want you to join the audit team," he said. "Temporarily at first, if that makes you comfortable. But I'll approve training, coursework, whatever you need. The way you see patterns? That's rare, and I'd be a fool not to recognize it." She stared at the offer. "Adrian, I don't have a degree anymore. I lost my certification after leaving the Army. I don't even know if my brain works the same way it used to." "It works beautifully," he said. "I watched you tear holes in Hale's lies with nothing more than a pen and your memory." Elena closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw Nico sleeping with his nebulizer, the stack of hospital bills overshadowing her tiny kitchen, and the years she had spent quietly shrinking herself so the world wouldn't see how tired she was. And now, this, an opportunity she never imagined. When she opened her eyes, they were wet. "I don't know if I deserve this," she whispered. Adrian smiled, a real one this time, small and warm. "You deserve more than this, but we're going to start here." She inhaled deeply, the weight of the morning settling into something steadier. Hope. "All right," she said. "I'll try." "No," he corrected softly. "You'll succeed." The harbor gleamed brighter as the sun rose fully, and for the first time in years, Elena felt the light reach her. She wasn't invisible, not anymore. 3 months changed everything and nothing at the same time. The Atlas Tower still smelled of coffee and printer ink every morning. The harbor still flashed with the same silvery light at sunrise. Elevators still chimed the same polite notes. But Elena Cruz no longer entered through the service door. Her new ID badge, clean, glossy, and shockingly official, opened the front lobby turnstiles. People who once walked past her without a glance now greeted her with, "Morning, Ms. Cruz. Do you need anything for the audit review? Great catch on that shipping discrepancy yesterday." She wasn't used to any of it, but Nico loved it. The first day she brought him to the pediatric specialist with her updated insurance, he had looked at her with wide, hopeful eyes. "Mom," he whispered, "does this mean you won't work nights anymore?" She had kissed his forehead. "It means I'll be home when you fall asleep." And that alone made every terrifying step of the last 3 months worth it. Still, not everything was easy. Some employees welcomed her. Others weren't shy about resenting the janitor miracle now checking their financial reports. But Elena had worn rank slides and trauma shears once. She wasn't afraid of a few whispers from people who had never known true pressure. Her new mentor, Claire Donovan, trained her meticulously. Adrian checked in frequently, never hovering but always nearby, as if making sure the world didn't swallow her progress whole. By the end of the quarter, Elena was catching patterns no one else saw. She discovered a series of fraudulent expense claims in the logistics division, identified irregularities in a vendor contract, and prevented a 6-figure scam from slipping through. A scam that might have succeeded if not for the woman who used to empty the office trash cans. One Friday, after a long day of reconciling invoices, Claire approached her desk. "Adrian wants to see you." Elena stiffened. That sentence always made her nervous. She found him in his office, sleeves rolled, jacket off, staring at a stack of binders. He looked up the moment she entered. "Close the door, Elena." Her stomach dropped. Oh no. This is it. I messed something up. But then he smiled, soft and warm in a way that unclenched something inside her. "I want you to take on something bigger," he said. "Something I've been planning since the morning you saved this company." He handed her a blue folder stamped with a silver compass. "The Cole Foundation for Ethical Accountability Director nomination. Elena M. Cruz." Elena blinked hard. I don't understand." "I'm launching a foundation," Adrian said, "to protect whistleblowers, to fund education for underpaid workers, to give people like you, people who notice what others ignore, the support they deserve." He continued softly, "And I want you to run it." Elena nearly dropped the folder. "Me? I'm not—" She searched for the right word. Qualified? Worthy? Enough? Adrian stepped closer, voice steady. "You have what this foundation needs: courage, moral clarity, and empathy. You understand what it means to be unseen, and what it takes to finally be seen." Her throat tightened. She thought of patience she saved in the desert heat, of nights wiping office desks while Nico coughed at home, of the red petition folder that felt like a detonator, of Victor's sneer, "You think you matter?" and of the moment she proved he was wrong. Tears blurred her vision. "Adrian, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he murmured. "The rest will come." She swallowed, then nodded. "Yes." They shook hands, but it felt like something deeper, a passing of trust, responsibility, and redemption. Later that night, Elena and Nico sat in a small cafe overlooking the water. He slurped his hot chocolate while she reread the foundation proposal, disbelieving. "Mom," Nico said quietly, "are you happy now?" Elena looked out at the harbor lights dancing on the waves. "I think," she whispered, "I'm finally learning how to be." Because she was no longer invisible. She was necessary. She was heard. She was the woman who stopped hiding and changed everything. And somewhere in the tower across the water, Adrian Cole watched the horizon with the same thought she carried in her chest. One act of courage can ripple farther than anyone imagines.